these committee meetings.
Okay.
I hadn't seen him.
The December 4th meeting of Strategic Planning Committee has now come to order. I'd like to have the invocation given by Councilman Valentine at this time.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for this beautiful nippy weather, Lord God. We ask that we protect each one of us. Father, we ask blessings on our families. Father, we ask blessings on our men and women in service as usual, Father, and give us guidance and wisdom tonight, Lord, as we try to do the people's business. And we ask all these things in your Son's holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Councilman Lambert is not here tonight. That's Todd Lambert. Everyone else is present. Public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item, please sign a card up at the podium, and we will grant you time to speak on these different items. Number 4, discussion of intent and initial results of the noise ordinance. This is something that we had just revised our noise ordinance to try to update things. We were having some problems throughout the parish. Through input from the Sheriff's Office, we revised the noise ordinance, and there's been some questions as to the intent and how things are going right now. So I asked Chief Deputy Bacala to come and inform people exactly the intent and what we're trying to do with this noise ordinance. Chief Deputy, you have the floor.
Well, first of all, I'm certainly here to answer questions, and I think the intent of the ordinance is clear. You know, one thing that happens is as Ascension Parish grows, we get closer together, and I think most people feel like they have they should be able to live a life without intrusion by noise from their neighbors from outside. Obviously, when we talk about this, I guess everybody's got an opinion. Just how much noise should we have to endure? And obviously, I don't think there's anybody's intent that if I can hear something audibly, that it's a violation of law. So let's kind of put that to rest. I'm sorry.
Chief, just for a second, for some background for people. Basically, in a nutshell, the old ordinance was anything above 85 decibels of noise was considered a violation, and what they're doing now is that they're giving some discretion to the officer investigating, and if it's and you can take the different instances, but if it impairs the neighborhood or it disturbs people, and there's a lot more wording to that, they have an opportunity to write a summons or use their discretion on it. And what brought that upon us is that for a number of years we've been having numerous complaints with people that have been abusing the noise ordinance, and yet when they go out there they're at 75 and 80 decibels, and there was nothing that anyone can do. And we didn't have a whole lot of guidelines on vulgar behavior and things of that sort. So it gives us a little more tools to do things now.
It's a little deeper than that, Mr. Shake Snyder. We had the old ordinance required that you stand with a decibel meter so many feet from someone's house. You take a continuous reading for 3 seconds, and you do that multiple times. And obviously, if you have a continuous sound, then you can measure that. But in order to take the 3 levels, and it has to be continuous sound, that doesn't account for sound that is perhaps pulsating, you know, louder and lower. And certainly, the first time somebody shows up with the decibel meter, you turn it down, and you really couldn't enforce it because you didn't have the decibel to back that up. I'll only tell you without going into detail that it was practically unenforceable ordinance. I don't know that 85 decibels is a bad level. Just the manner in which you had to determine the 85 was not workable. I mean, it was impossible to enforce. Going to what we suggested and you adopted, basically we didn't reinvent the wheel, and you didn't reinvent the wheel with this new ordinance. We took existing ordinances from other local governing authorities, kind of mixed them together and came up with something, Lindsay did, that made a lot of sense and kind of going to the trend that everybody else is going to. If you don't mind, I'll read, I think, the operative part. It says, no person shall make or cause to be made any loud or raucous noise in the parish which is, and this is the key part, offensive to persons of ordinary sensibilities, and which renders the enjoyment of life or property uncomfortable or interferes with the public's peace and comfort. So that's not, I mean, basically you have to come up to the reasonable man standard. Most people would be disturbed by this noise. If most people would, then it probably is going to be a violation of the new ordinance. If most people wouldn't be disturbed, even though that one person is, if it isn't so loud that it would disturb most people, it's probably not a violation. I think some of the fear here is that we put a lot on the deputies themselves in the field as far as them having to make a decision as to whether it rises to that level. Certainly there are a lot of statutes and ordinances on the books where deputies have to make decisions. Is that a violation or isn't it one? And this is one of those types of ordinances. I think I'll best at this point, I'll answer questions. I know y'all have some.
Any questions?
No, you've had some experiences with calls from that, and it worked out all right? I know I've checked into one of them, and it worked out good.
Yes, I had one call, and I think it's several other people had the same call. And basically, it was from an individual who had, prior to the new noise ordinance being enacted, several calls had been made about loud music from a certain house. Deputies had routinely gone to the house, done their best to determine whether it was or wasn't, and took no action. After the new ordinance was put into place, same thing happened. Deputies were called out by a neighbor to the house, found that they didn't find that it rose to the level of being a violation of the statute, took no action. The individual who is the owner of the home where the music was coming from had some concern that deputies had too much leeway in making these determinations. I can tell you I gave them my cell phone number and said, call me if the deputies come back out. I made a phone call 10 days later. Deputies had not come back out. It's a regular event at the house. And as of today, 3 weeks later, I still don't know that there's ever been an issue with it. So the what if really didn't pan out in that case.
Thank you. That's good.
Thank you. Ben?
Tony, I guess from a standpoint of view, with the ordinance as it's drafted, and since the ordinance is taking place, are you comfortable with it and enforcement ability of your deputies to go out and enforce it as it's written, and make sure that, you know, we're doing everything we can to protect the people who are making a noise complaint?
I think it's a very enforceable ordinance. And when we sat down and really looked at this about a month ago when we started, when it finally came into our hands as a final document, a final law, maybe 2 months ago, we recognized right off the bat, without a call from anyone, that we needed to cautiously approach this new statute. One thing that we did is said, look, let's just tell people, look, we've got a new ordinance. Let's don't start writing tickets on day one. Let's make sure that folks understand that there's a new ordinance, that they're going to have to abide by a new standard. And also there was quite a bit of discussion about what is, what isn't, philosophically from the administrative side of the sheriff's office, making sure that everybody's on the same page. Now, we're an organization with 250 employees. I hope that they all understand our position on it, which is, I think, pretty clear. You know, and just some things we talked about is, you know, when you talk about the statute says offensive to ordinary sensibilities. Fireworks display on 4th of July doesn't violate ordinary sensibilities. Now, if you want to have a fireworks display on a non-holiday, middle of the week, it may. So I think there's a lot of common sense that needs to be taken in this thing, and we've stressed use some common sense in interpreting and enforcing this new law.
Any further questions? Tony, I appreciate it, and I'm glad we're using common sense with some of these ordinances. I think that works out the best way all the time anyway. And we'll see how it goes, and if you have any problems or suggestions for amendments in the future, please let us know and we'll take a look at it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Next thing, number 5, discussion of proposed ordinance banning roadside animal sales. Councilman Chris Lohr brought this to my attention a few weeks ago, and basically we're having some issues. To give a little background, Baton Rouge has recently passed an ordinance banning animal sales, and Livingston is about to, and it's increasing some animal sales in Ascension Parish, and in some instances there are some abuses, and we want to try to address this in the best way possible for the residences of Ascension Parish. We have a number of people here tonight before we get into our discussion that wishes to speak on this. Ms. Stacy Aurelian? Stacy, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And just to let y'all know that the Livingston ordinance did pass already.
Okay.
The reason this is really important to me is I'm about to move to this parish. I have family that lives in this parish, and this is it's inspiration buying is what happens when these people come to this flea market. They don't necessarily go there to buy a pet. It's just a thing, oh, let's take this home today, and it's like a disposable item to a lot of people, and there's no way to get back with these breeders when they start having to spend money. You know, they spend a lot of money for the dog, and they think that's where it ends, and it's not really where it ends. And when they get sick, there's no way to go back. A responsible breeder has a contract. Even if you go to the animal control, most of the time you can have a certain amount of time where you can go back with the dog and find out, you know, what you can do about the illness or return the dog or whatever. There's just no way to know what to do. And the dogs, what's important to me is the dogs are kept in a lot of time stressful conditions, no water, direct heat, you know, cold. The puppies are not taken care of properly when they're being displayed, actually. And if I can't, you know, if people don't really, if they're not animal lovers, what I don't understand is why they can't understand how much this costs everybody. Because it's like $133 per dog, according to the Humane Society of the United States, in Louisiana, to keep a dog in the shelter, feed it, shelter it, and the eventual euthanasia, because about 128,000 dogs are taken into shelters in Louisiana. About 76 of the, well, animals, 76,000 of that are dogs, and about 50,000 are eventually euthanized. But we're spending this money on the dogs no matter what happens. And a lot of these, 30% of dogs in shelters are purebred dogs. A lot of people don't even realize that. And a lot of that is coming from these types of things. And so, I mean, I really wish, and I think what's going to happen here is, you know, it's passed in Baton Rouge, it's passed in Livingston, and then y'all are going to have a big influx here of animals, unwanted animals. And, you know, I shop here all the time. I shop at Walmart, I shop at Tanger, I'm in the parish all the time. And I constantly see animals just running around, and they're not all, you know, mixes. A lot of them are just dogs running the streets that look like little cute dogs and things like that. It just, I'm hoping that y'all will consider this and really seriously think about it, because the neighboring parishes have done it, and I think it would be something really good. And if not for the care of animals, just for the sheer money that it's costing the taxpayers. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Stacy. Next speaker is Mary Presidio. Did I get that right?
Almost. Mighty Crusader.
Mighty?
Just following up with what Stacy said, one of the biggest issues, and I think some of you have experienced it in East Baton Rouge, was the traffic on Segan Lane. It was like you had like a drive-through of dog vendors there. Believe it or not, last summer, only 3 of them were not from Ascension Parish. All these these puppy mills are located here, and they're taking them elsewhere. Well, now that they can't sell them over there, they're going to come back over here. And Mr. Shake Snyder, you asked me before what was wrong with flea market selling. Basically, that the flea markets aren't under any regulation by the Agro Committee. I mean, they can pretty much do as they want. So you don't have the same, they can sell sick dogs, they can do whatever they want. There's nothing regulating them there. And as she was saying, there are no buyer contracts. These people are selling out of their cars. If you buy a sick dog, you don't have 90 days to return it. You have no recourse. And what happens is, okay, say you bought the dog and the dog is sick, but now you're going to find out that the dog has hip dysplasia and needs, you know, a $3,000 surgery. Where is that dog going to end up? So, and it's going to cost you $133 to take that dog into animal control, to feed it, and then kill it. So we're trying to just basically approach it from this end. Cities that enacted this had a slight increase the first 3 quarters after the law was enacted of animals being dumped in the shelter, but then in the 4th quarter after the law was enacted, this is in Harris County, in various cities around the country, in California, they had like a 27% drop of the animals being surrendered into the shelter. So obviously this does make a difference. And this is the fastest growing parish in the state. It just doesn't make sense not to have this, because I'm one of those touchy-feely people that look at this. One of the reasons that my sister liked it out here was she said, I don't see a lot of strays. This is in East Baton Rouge, Livingston. Well, let her come to Livingston. You don't want to have that reputation. This whole state is growing, and we could be the first in the nation to do this. You know, we could be the first ones to appeal to the young professionals that do care about our animals, that do care how things are done. So aside from just one little statistic that she didn't give you, it costs the state of Louisiana, now this is not just the parish, but it costs the state of Louisiana $10 million just on dogs that were euthanized. And a big chunk of it happened here because East Baton Rouge, Livingston, and Ascension were the little mecca for these unwanteds. So, and by the way, Lafayette they'll probably be after you. I'm hoping that this passes soon, but we're making history now. Help us do it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Jennifer Gross.
I just want to piggyback off of what the two speakers before me
Speak in the
said.
microphone, please.
Basically, we're trying to eliminate the impulse buying, because impulse buying leads to the animals being dumped off at the shelters. I mean, do you really want to do business with somebody that can pack up their business in the back of an SUV within a matter of minutes and disappear? Do you want your wife going to Walmart and coming home with a dog, and you know nothing about it, and then 3 days later, it's getting dropped off at animal control? So those are the kind of things. We just want the pet owners to take responsibility for the purchases. Dogs can cost anywhere from being free on up. I mean, $1,500, $700, $600. It's tax-free when it's cash, and then the taxpayers have to, take care of the animals in the animal control shelters. And these people are disappearing. They're taking the money, and we don't hear from them. I mean, you wouldn't buy a car or a set of tires without checking into it, right? And the dog or the cat that you buy is going to be around for the next 10, 15 years of your life. You should investigate it. You should know where it's coming from. You should know the parents. The breeder, a responsible breeder, will invite you into their house to look at the parents. How would you like it if you bought an animal that you didn't know anything about and bring it home and the animal bites your child? Because parents could have been bred to fight and you don't know that. It's just things to consider. Another thing, I'm a resident of Prairieville. I live very close to Old Jefferson Highway and Highway 42. Many accidents occur there. It's also, many people there are selling animals on the side of the road. I personally have called Ascension Parish sheriffs to come and shoot people away. And one time, most recent, was underage kids on the side of the road giving free kittens away, as well as selling dachshunds, weenie dogs. The sheriff told them to call their parents to come get them. I mean, it's kids trying to make a buck as well. Of course, Highway 42 at Jefferson Highway, the speed limit's 45, 50 miles per hour. Cars are zooming by. It's not safe. I mean, you're going to get hit. There's going to be an accident. People aren't paying attention to the light cycles or the cars in front of them. Basically, in flea markets and outside, the heat of the Louisiana summer is harsh. The dogs don't need to be out there. There's not adequate water or shelter or food. They're in cages that aren't big enough for the litter, and the puppies are on top of each other, and they need to be, like I said, in a home where you can see everything. So that's basically what I have to say, and I appreciate you giving us this chance to speak tonight.
Thank you very much. Elaine Strupak? Elaine?
Hi, my name is Elaine Strupak, and you're my councilman, Mr. Schaefer, so thank you very much for letting me speak. I actually volunteer for an adoption group, and I see what comes into the animal shelter in Ascension Parish. I own actually several animals that have come from the shelter, some of them being purebred dogs. And there's just so many reasons that this is a good thing. Number one, with the state of the economy and everybody saying that the recession is coming or already here, the number of animals that are being returned to the shelter because people are unable to care for them, up to not being able to pay for food or pet care, it's a number that's rising. People who buy the dogs, especially at the flea market, might not realize how much it costs to care for an animal, and then that is another reason why they return. A lot of animals that we see that come in to where we do adoptions that come from the flea market, and they come in way too young. They take them from their mothers at like 4 weeks, where 8 and up weeks is really more acceptable. They don't collect sales tax in most cases or have no type of peddler's license. I've seen them often on Segan Lane, and it is just out of control there, and they finally did pass something. I spoke with the property manager over there at Walmart and that whole area off of Segan, and he just said no matter what he did, he said 30 minutes later they would show back up. So just sending a message that, that you need to be more responsible if you're selling animals, I think would be a really good thing for Ascension. And I thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other speakers, Senator? There we go. Councilman Kluwat.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we move this ordinance to the full council.
Okay.
I don't know if that's what your
Without
intent
any
was tonight.
discussion?
No,
Well,
we'll get some, if you want discussion before any motion.
Actually,
I'll
the-
withdraw my motion, that's no problem.
Actually, on the agenda was a discussion of the proposed
Oh.
ordinance banning roadside animals, and I guess what the
Thank you, and
intention
I'll
of us
withdraw
having
my
the meeting
motion, that's no
tonight
problem.
is we want to put this out there for the people of the parish. We want to get input from people in the parish as we had tonight. I'm taking notes and all of the information, and we will take this information along with, I've received some emails, and Mr. Michael Blanc, who is our animal control officer, is going to wanted also to address us tonight. And we would like to take this under advisement and
Sure.
have any more input until the next strategic planning meeting. And with our animal control director's input, come up with a revised ordinance that fits Ascension Parish that people can look at in advance. We will give this to you a week or so before the next meeting, and then try to attempt to vote on it.
I just want to say,
Yeah.
the reason that the free animals are included in the one ordinance is because free kittens and puppies end up as pit bull babies.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was.
Yes, ma'am. Mike, would you?
Good evening, Councilman. I'm the supervisor for the animal shelter in Ascension Parish. And East Baton Rouge passed this ordinance, and I think they did it for a reason, and I'm just going to advise. First of all, I'd like to say we don't really have an animal problem in Ascension Parish. That may shock you. We got a people problem, okay? And this is one of the things that is a people problem. And when people buy animals, look, I go and do talks for y'all at libraries, at Rotary clubs, at schools, about being responsible pet owners, okay? And when someone purchases an animal off the side of the road, you got to understand what they're saying, off the side of the road. That's an impulse purchase. And it's a live animal. And it's like saying, well, I'm going to get a baby and bring it in my house. And you don't prepare for it. And normally what happens is it becomes a nuisance. And yes, it does probably end up on the street or with us, and I can't give it the percentages, but I would say the numbers probably are up there pretty high. I could go over the dollar and cents figure, y'all know what it is. I mean, y'all know what our budget is, and I could tell you we took in 4,000, we're right at 4,000 animals this year. Has there been an increase? It's about the same as it was last year. Do I think from East Baton Rouge stopping what they're doing and Livingston stopping what they're doing, will it increase our parish? Probably so. It probably will, because naturally that market's going to move to where they can do it. Y'all are leaders of the council, I mean, of the parish, talk to your constituents, see what they think, you know, and I think it's a pretty good deal personally, because I think in the long run, you're probably going to have some ill effects from the market closed down that direction and moving us. And if y'all got any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Any question for Mr. Moore?
Just a couple, Mike. With what I have in front of me here, I mean, it's fairly not very detailed. It talks about restricted areas and establishing, you know, one of the things that I agree this is an issue that, you know, needs some addressing, but we also need to make sure when we say unrestricted or restricted areas of where the animal sales can take place, and what's going to be the detail of how those animals are restricted.
I'm just talking about freelancing off the
Right.
side of the road.
And then the other thing too would be legitimate breeders that are within.
Now, on the flea market deal, we get complaints about animals sold through the flea market, but I want to say this, the people that run the flea market respond very rapidly and quickly to a complaint, and they will not let a person back in there again, that's, you know, if a complaint comes in. But they're all right. At the flea market, they don't directly monitor all these different animal sales that go through. And again, it's an impulse purchase, and they don't look to see if it's only 4 weeks old. They don't ask the question if they have shots. And we'd much rather them come to the animal shelter and adopt through us. And so if they go to roadside sales, you're going to kind of take some of your animals that we're moving through adoption out of the market, you know, so that's something for y'all to think about, you know. And we do our share of adoption, and we go out there and we hustle for it. We're on the internet, we're on TV, we're in the newspaper, but when somebody, remember this, when somebody comes to the animal shelter, they've given a lot of thought that they want a pet. When they buy it on the side of the road, they didn't think about it. It's impulse, it's cute, it's a puppy, it grows up, it has needs and wants that they're not really prepared for. So, any other questions?
Councilman Joseph.
If the ordinance is adopted, who would enforce that ordinance?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't have the manpower, nor we are
Funding strap too.
no, we're not
Set up.
set up through the police department.
Well, and
we don't do that.
to follow up on that, one of the problems that we have is a lot of the sales on weekends and times
Let me jump in
when.
1 second to help answer that for you. They're reported to the animal control in East Baton Rouge, and then it's sent to the police department.
Right.
Who go out and take care of it.
Yeah.
That's how they do it. And so I would think probably that's how it would occur if you decide to go that direction.
Well, and also, a lot of the problems that they're having now, and the complaints by the constituents now, are breaking current ordinance and current laws that we have. Inhumane treatment of animals, it's on the books, and it's not enforced. And we need to try to find the best mechanism to be able to enforce that, and whether it is complete banning of that or the wording of that, I think we need to sit down and see what's best that fits into and taking the information, for example, from Councilman Johnson and everything, their concerns, and word it correctly where we can enforce it. And one of the things as we continue, and Lindsay is going to give us something real quick
I mean, it was always, you know, it's thought-
about the parish court, is when we do get a parish court, we
You
will.
know, you get into permits to sell and then governing whether or not somebody goes inspect if they have all their shots. It's very time-consuming and detailed if you go that direction. I think that's why East Baton Rouge went the way they went. They just banned roadside safety. It's probably easiest mechanism to fix it to go that direction. I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm only suggesting that easiest way to get it done is to do it that way. With that said, you know, it's really lies in your hands how y'all want to go about doing it.
And again, I'd like to give some, I've had some people that input about permitting and licensing and regulations and getting vet checks as all part of that. And I would like to be able to spend some time, and whoever would like to, with Mike, and see if there's some options for us to do, or we can choose A and B when we come back and meet again, to give councilmen an option to go in whatever direction we want to.
Councilman, the classified ads are full of dogs,
Right.
you know, from backyard breeding. And they don't go, 99% of people are not on the roadside. You know, they're selling it from their home. And the ones that's selling from the road have more or less turned it into a business. That's what it is. It's a business that they did. And I would probably think that most of those people that you're going to see coming to Ascension Parish doing that are not from Ascension Parish. You know? So with that said, you know, I think that probably banning is probably your best route.
Okay.
It's probably your best route to go. In my opinion, for the shelter anyway. Because it really cuts into our adoption.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my issue I'm in agreement with this is based on the fact that it is impulse buying.
Right. That's the biggest.
I have children. Most of them grown now, but I mean, they've walked up
You know,
there
you
at
already
Walmart and somebody's giving a cat away.
You
Go to
already
the flea
have
market
this.
and somebody, but I also live in a rural area, and that's where those animals end up.
That's right.
Okay? They drop them off in rural areas, and they become a nuisance, and, you know, and they end up a sad death or being picked up by you guys.
Exactly.
So, yes, I don't have a problem with the backyard breeders, because they're gonna, you know, people go look at the dogs at their house, they're gonna see what the environment, what, you know, what the parents look like and all that.
Right.
It's just the selling in the parking lots and impulse buying, and
It
10 minutes
turns
later,
out bad.
they're not worried about that
It
animal.
usually turns out bad. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Mike. And we will have something for this committee at the next committee meeting. If any input by any councilman or fears and anything that we want to investigate, we will forward that with Mike and myself and bring that, all the options to the councilman for opinions at the next meeting. And we will try to vote on something in the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, would mind running that through the sheriff department just to make sure they feel comfortable
Yes, sir.
in enforcing that?
Yes, sir. Will do. Okay, number 6, report on planning and zoning, Director Ricky Compton. We've just asked Ricky to come by. There's some things that they're working on right now, and we wanted to bring everybody with the council up to date.
Good evening. The first thing on my list is the master plan. We issued an RFQ last week. It went out nationally, and I have copies here so you guys can look at it later. But there are some dates that I wanted to share with you. The deadline for the RFQ qualifications is January 9th. Our goal is within 2 weeks of that date for the selection committee to review the applications and using the selection criteria established by the council to select the top 3. And at that point, that's also a January 09 date. We're thinking plus or minus 2 weeks. We will give those top 3 consultants the RFP that we're currently preparing. They will have approximately 30 days to prepare their proposals, and so that puts us to the middle of February. and we will interview them after that time, and hopefully, within the first week or two of March, select the consultant to begin preparing the master plan. It's our goal to be out there in the parish, in the planning districts, in the council districts, meeting with the citizens, with the consultant, to start this process as soon as possible. And if that's April or May, that's our goal, as soon as possible. The next item...
Ricky, real quick,
Yes, sir.
what do you hope to accomplish by the master plan? What are your goals for that?
That's sort of a big question.
Well, I mean, where are we headed with the master plan and why? Just let everybody know.
It's my opinion that Ascension Parish has spent an awful lot of money studying an awful lot of problems, but we've never compiled all of those studies into one plan for the future. It's my intent that if we meet within the 11 council districts, and I'm going to call them planning districts because I think that they each have a unique character to them, we meet within those districts and we figure out what those citizens believe the future of the parish is. What do they believe their vision of Ascension Parish is? And we take all these studies and we take all these reports and we take all this stuff we've spent all this money on, and we have our consultant analyze that, and we have them meet with the citizens, figure out what they want for the parish, and then we compile a plan. And that plan is going to be comprised of elements. And the elements are going to focus on transportation. They're going to focus on infrastructure. They're going to focus on open space and parks. They're going to focus on housing. They're going to focus on a number of elements. We will prioritize them so the consultant doesn't get bogged down looking at something that we don't want them focusing all their time and attention on. But they'll focus on all these elements, and all these elements will contain goals, objectives, and policies. And that policies is the most important part, because once we've established what the goals and the objectives are, we need the policies to understand how we're going to implement those. And if we can get the citizens to participate in this process, and I'm thinking at a minimum 2 to 3 meetings within each district, we're going to introduce a consultant. We're going to charrette all of these ideas. We're going to come back and we're going to tell them, here's what we've come up with based on your suggestions. What do you think? Meet with all 11 districts multiple times and get a consensus so that when we prepare this master plan, the citizens agree, this is the vision that we have for Ascension Parish. Whether it be Ascension 2030, Ascension 2050, it's a long-range plan for all of these problems that we've already studied, but we've never put it down on paper and said, here's how we're going to solve them. Here's how we're going to pay for them. Here's how we're going to actively prioritize all of these things. And I think this is how we're going to get there. And this is a long process. But if we get started right away, you know, the first year is going to fly by because we're going to get to a point where we say, here's our deliverable, now what's our next step? And we got to start drilling down and looking at, you know, maybe some intersection improvements, maybe looking at what happens when you cross Port Vincent into Ascension Parish. That's a gateway. What happens at 73 and Airline Highway? What happens at 73 in the interstate? What happens at 44 in the interstate and beyond? You know, we've got all these areas that are very unique. What happens outside of the city of Donaldsonville? It's one of these things that if we can focus on in each individual district, I think we can get to a point where we come to a consensus that the vision is this. I don't know what it is. It's going to take the citizens to help me decide that. Next. The next item is MU2. You got a question? No? Okay. It's coming up for introduction tonight, and what we've done is we've created a new zoning category. And what it does is it takes the mixed-use zoning designation and it creates a smaller scale commercial zoning category. What we've done is we've established criteria that will allow sites that may not necessarily front on an arterial. You know, some of these sites that we've looked at on 73 or on 42, that they have to come for MU because they want to do something that doesn't exist in Crossroads commercial. So what we've done is we've taken the MU, we've pared it down and pulled out some of those offensive uses, and we've created a small scale, and I'm going to call it residential scale, office and commercial category. And we've created standards for a maximum footprint. The biggest building you'll have in MU2 is 8,500 square feet on the ground. So it's basically a townhome-sized building. You can do 2 stories. You could do 1 million square feet in MU2. But the biggest building you're going to have is 8,500 square feet. So you're going to have an office park or a cluster of buildings that create a residential scale character. And what we did is we revised a little piece of the zoning map where we've had 4 different applications come to the zoning group asking for mixed use. And we said, listen, give us 30 days, give us 60 days. Let us establish this MU2 category, and they agreed. That meets the intent of what we would have happen in the future on our property. So that's that one. The next one is a series of 5 ordinance revisions. And one of them is the development ordinance, and 4 of them are the subdivision regulations. They're coming up through the zoning subcommittee and the subdivision subcommittee for introduction this month, for a public hearing, hopefully in January. And I'm going to run through them real quick. In the development ordinance, we're talking about just adding a new line that says all commercial projects shall demonstrate their interconnectivity to other commercial properties immediately adjacent. It's the intent to reduce traffic on thoroughfares by providing alternate routes through commercial property. It's absolutely ridiculous. You can't drive from one shopping center to the next if you're going shopping and then getting your hair cut. It's absolutely ridiculous if you're going to get a hamburger and then you want to go next door to pick up your LSU flag. So all I'm trying to say is if you're developing a piece of property that's adjacent to another piece of property, I want them to connect. I don't want there to be a grade separation. I don't want there to be a fence or a wall. I want it to connect. And we're not talking about a service road, just talking about connect your parking lots, connect to drive, just connect. You don't have to get on airline to get to the next shopping center is the intent. The next 4 items are the subdivision regulation items. One of them we don't have a problem in Ascension Parish with yet, but as you know, I came from Florida where you have a lot of nationals, builders, building a lot of ugly product. Our townhouses are very nice, but we have a piece of code that allows them to be very ugly. And all I want to do is clean it up. And I want it to say not more than 4 townhouses shall be built in a row with the same or approximately the same front building line, and not more than 6 shall be contiguous unless the townhouses are served by an alley. Today our code basically allows you to build, I believe, up to a 300-foot townhome building. I mean, that's a football field long building. Can you imagine what would happen if a developer came in with a 10 or 15 acre site developing 3 units an acre and builds these 300-foot long townhomes? All I'm saying is if you're front loading, if your garage is on the front of your unit, you can only have a 4-unit building. If you're going to go to the expense of building an alley, which makes it a little different character, you have a road out front and an alley in the back, you can do up to 8. So we're just shutting the ability of building these humongous buildings down. And we've seen them in Orlando, and I can show you pictures. They're not what we want here. The next one is just eliminating a sentence. The sentence is, particular consideration should be given to the retention of marginal land that is subject to periodic inundation for recreation or natural conservation uses. I don't believe we need that in the code. If a developer is going to preserve floodlands for his parks, let it come as a staff level decision that this developer is doing a good project, and yes, his park will flood, but that is an acceptable solution because the development is good. I don't need it in the code to say particular consideration should be given to giving us that land. I just don't think it needs to be there because it sort of seems to promote us receiving bad lands for parks. The next one is just going to change one word, and it's a valuable word. The language is already in the code. For purposes of planning, the developer of a subdivision, PUD, SPUD, or T&D with an average lot size, this I added, an average lot size smaller than a half acre. You know, if a developer is going to develop a large lot subdivision, this does not apply. Developing smaller than a half acre lot shall. Today the language says is encouraged. We can't do anything with is encouraged. We're trying to get them to do something. Shall use the following minimum criteria in assessing recreation needs. All I'm trying to do is change our code because today developers are encouraged and they're not doing it. If I say shall, they're going to do it. And it's saying for every 1,000 people or 285 units, you shall provide a tot lot, a children's play area with equipment, that's a half acre, a field area for young kids, 1.5 acres, and an older area for children, 1.5 acres. So the argument is, and I met with developers and I met with some contractors and talked about all these issues, and that was one that they raised a little flag on. And I said, listen, If you're developing a 40-acre site, you're not giving that much land up. You're only giving a percentage because you're only going to get so many units. And the more units you get, the more land you're going to give away for park. It's this trade-off that I'm just trying to deal with. You shall provide it. You're not encouraged. The argument for it, obviously, is that it's a better community. The argument against it is, well, we're already having to give up so much land for stormwater. You're already having to give up so much land for, all this other stuff. Well, I would make the argument that if you design your stormwater pond in such a way that we can count it towards your park requirement, if you put a trail around it, we'll let you count some of that stormwater. We'll let you count, entrances that are designed maybe with something else special in mind, a gazebo where you can go and have a little picnic. So there's some leeway here. I just want the language to say shall versus is encouraged, because we can't do anything with is encouraged. We just can't. And then the last item gets to a little more complicated issue, and this is for new development only. I've heard several citizens say that we'll never allow that to happen. I said, well, I'm not asking you to do it, I'm asking the next guy to do it. A public subdivision, PUD, SPUD, or TAD with more than 40 units shall have more than one exit, preferably on different streets or in different directions. Street network should facilitate the separation of local and through traffic. If a developer is going to build a big neighborhood, he should design his neighborhood so that maybe there's a collector street network and a local street network, and that collector street network, I want it to go out. I don't want it to terminate. There's an argument to be made that if we can show that that collector street network doesn't connect out but is reducing the number of trips because of internal circulation, yeah, we can revise that language to show that that is a valid argument. But my argument is we're going to solve transportation and traffic problems with interconnectivity, not with allowing developers to continue to dead-end their subdivisions. And once again, I'm not asking existing subdivisions to connect. I'm asking future subdivisions to provide connections to vacant land that's adjacent to them so that when a new subdivision comes online, we're connecting it. And not allowing them to do the spite strip, where two streets come together but they never connect because this neighborhood said, no, we don't want to do that. The last item is the historical overlay section of the code. I've been working on it with Julio and my staff, and I think we've almost got it to a level where we're ready to introduce it for public hearing. It's really just adding a lot of those details that were missing the first time it was drafted. And it's really a matter of cleaning it up and creating a more user-friendly code. In the hopper, I've drafted my landscape ordinance. I've got in my budget, thanks to the administration, some money that next year we're going to go out and we're going to find a consultant to help me fix it, to make sure it's Louisiana friendly. I don't want to do anything that's entirely offensive, but a landscape ordinance will change the way this parish looks with future development, I guarantee it. I'm developing a utility inspection process so that when we build new neighborhoods, we know where the utilities are going to be installed, because the next step of my process is going to be figuring out how we build sidewalks. If we can figure out where these utilities go, we can build sidewalks. And that's it.
Questions for Mr. Compton?
On your survey, what's the estimated, what's your project that master plan going to cost us?
In the RFQ, we put a budget that was less than the money we have. We secured funding from CPEX in the amount of $100,000, and in our budget we have $300,000. We're going to pay CPEX some money to help. I'm a staff of 3. I can't do it by myself. We're going to pay them to help us, and in the budget we said we have $300,000 to spend in the RFQ. I believe at the end of this first lump of money, you guys will see the value in what we've done and hopefully give me some more money to do some more work, because we're not going to solve it with this first hunk, but I guarantee you, you're going to like what you see.
So this can run us about $200,000 to $400,000 for the overall plan?
Sure. I don't know. I've never done it.
Well, that master plan, Mr. President, what you just said in recreation a couple of weeks ago, we don't need to spend money on master plan? I just,
It's,
it's a master plan right here.
yeah.
It's a master plan.
I think that with, as far as recreation goes, as a landscape architect, I can tell you there's a level of service that we are not meeting in this parish. And I'm going to tell the consultant that the element of the recreation element of that master plan needs to address level of service. And if we've got a population area of the parish that's not meeting their level of service, the master plan will tell you where we need to improve that, what size it needs to be, and what facilities need to be within that park. Whether or not that's the recreation master plan that we're talking about, I guarantee you that it's high on my list, that we're not meeting a level of service, and it will reflect that in the master plan.
Yes, and one of the things in the past, we've done some beginnings of master plans, and it hadn't been allowed to be completed for various reasons, and so hopefully whatever we start, we can get to the end of it where the people of the parish can see the benefits of this whenever we go through that. Ricky, I appreciate it. I know we could discuss a lot of things. Anyone that has any questions, we feel free to get with you. And also, these things as they come up, Ricky, we would appreciate it if you would bring it up first at strategic planning so that we could have a dialogue and discussion, and then go to the councils so that we'll have some background in it. A lot of times we could have greater discussion here and educate the council on exactly what your intent is so that we can move forward with it. When we go directly to the council, we really don't have the time to go through everything like you did tonight, and we really appreciate that. Any other comments by council? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick.
Just for information, Lindsay is progressing with, we had mentioned about the parish court. We are progressing. Ordinance is just about been completed, and she's working on getting someone to preside over it, and so she's continuing to work forward toward that, and as soon as we get some resolution, we will bring it forward. With that, we're looking at number 7.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Moved by Mr. Valentine, seconded by Mr. Johnson. We are now adjourned.
Go into the next round.